Hey everyone, welcome to the horror show. I'm Cecil Laird and happy Halloween. That's right. I am here to actually complete my review series on Halloween comics. Now, if you didn't know, last year when the movie was coming out, Halloween 2018, I did 3 different episodes reviewing all of the Halloween comics that I had up until that point, which, believe it or not, I thought was all of them. And then, over the course of the last year, it turns out that I found out that there were 5 more issues of Halloween comics that I had not gotten my hands on yet. So, I got my hands on them, and I am here to review them for you guys. Sorry about the lighting. I'm not sure why it likes to shift like that, just because of, I don't know. I'm not sure why it does that, so sorry, guys. But nonetheless, let's dive into this. So, the first 3 are Chaos comics. They came from a company called Chaos when it was around, and that's what actually originated Lady Death and Evil Ernie. They were Chaos comics. So Chaos, for a very brief period, held the Halloween license, apparently. The next 2 were more in association with the comics that I reviewed last year, done by, I believe it was Joshua Hutchinson, because both of these issues were written by him. So these 2 don't have anything to do with the first 3, but I'll get into those eventually. Now, the first 3 are a ongoing storyline that basically take place over the course of 3 years as these were coming out. The end of each one says, "Oh, see you next Halloween." So the first one is pretty cool, and just to give credit where credit's due, which I'll do for each issue, assuming I remember. So hang on, where do they put the credits in this one? Oh, lots of Lady Death stuff in the back. Alright, so this one is story by Phil Nutman and Daniel Ferranz. The pencils by David Brewer. And visual content inks by Chris Arnold. Colorists Jason Jensen and John Merrifield. Lettering by Oscar Gongora. So yeah, that's the credits for this. So this one is actually about Tommy Doyle. This takes place, I believe, 20 or so years after the first Halloween movie, so right around the time of H2O. Actually, a couple of years before that, so it might be like 18 years. But it's a grown-up Tommy Doyle, and he's actually on the phone right away with Cyphers, who I think was in the movie as well, but I'm not 100% sure. I think I heard Dave McCrae mention the name of Cyphers in his Halloween video, so that's why I'm guessing he's the same. Anyway, Cyphers has been safekeeping Loomis's notes, and so Doyle is trying to get his hands on Loomis's notes to find out more about Michael Myers because he believes that he's still out there. Unfortunately for Cyphers, Doyle is right, and Michael Myers is still out there. So it does not go well for Cyphers, but Doyle, and then it does a bit of a redo of the first movie here in flashback form. But then we see Tommy Doyle get to Cypher's house, and he gets all of the notes, as you can see here, right as the cops arrive, and they can't find Cyphers, so they don't know, they're like, okay, well, just make sure you sign out the books that you're taking down below. And so he leaves. Of course, they don't see that Myers is right there. And this is, I can't really show this without getting demonetized, so it does show the remains of Cypher's body pinned to a door, so to speak. So this actually then continues. Well, I'll just show it. We'll see if it gets demonetized or not. But anyway, it continues with Doyle now reading through some of Loomis's journals. So it actually goes into the history of Michael Myers after what happened in 1978, after he killed his sister. So it's a bit of the institution stuff that we saw in the Rob Zombie remake as opposed to the original movie. This obviously came out way before that. But we meet another doctor that Loomis starts talking with regularly. They start developing kind of a relationship. Meanwhile, all of these kids, there's other kids in this juvie detention center, and one of them is kind of a bully to Michael Myers, and so he gets a crayon to the eye. Another is a big kid that eats the birthday cake that was brought for Michael, and so he gets got with I can show that. That's not bad. Little bit of badness there. So it shows what Michael was doing in juvie, being Michael Myers even as a little kid. So it continues on. Doyle continues reading the notes. This is what the majority of the book is, but then when you flash back to the present, then you see that someone is coming after Doyle and... Oh, no, I'm sorry. This is actually still a flashback. I forgot. So, yeah, there you go. No, there is someone coming after Doyle, though. But that's what we're getting at right here. I don't want to show this page necessarily, so we do see that Myers shows up where Doyle is, and there is a confrontation, and it's a pretty good little fight, honestly. Tommy Doyle versus Michael Myers, and as you can see, he gets the better of him, and unfortunately, that's basically how the issue ends, with Michael's head on fire on his way out the window, and of course his body has disappeared like at the end of the movie. And so Tommy Doyle says, I need to go after him. And then it says to be continued next Halloween. So that's where issue number 2 comes in. So this was just called Halloween, and I actually have the foil cover version of this, which is this right here. That was actually the first one that I got my hands on, and I paid an exorbitant amount for it, so I didn't even bother reading it. I got the cheaper version so I could read it and keep this one kind of tucked away, but it's a cool... I'm not sure if it's even a two-sided. I can't remember if it's a two-sided. No, the back of it is just the certificate of authenticity for it, so it's the same exact comic, just with a chromium foil cover kind of thing that I paid entirely too much for. But these are really rare and they're hard to get a hold of. But that is the 2 covers for issue number 1. Ooh, there we go. Doing it in reverse is kind of weird, guys. Sorry about the glare, the lighting. So moving into issue number 2, it was called Halloween 2, The Blackest Eyes. And this literally picks up where the last one left off, although the artist has changed on it. So it's still written by Phil Nutman, this time with Mickey Yablans. It's penciled by Jerry Beck this time, inked by Chance Wolfe and Sandu Flora, colors by Jason Jensen with John Merrifield again, and lettered by Oscar Gongora once more. So you can see it picks up right where the last one left off, with him falling out the window, totally on fire. Tommy Doyle looks a little beefier in this new version. But this one sticks with Doyle. It doesn't really go back to the Loomis Diaries. This one is a constant thing, but the interesting thing is after Myers escapes, then we actually meet this gentleman right here, who is, hang on, let me get the name right. It's Richie Castle. And if you guys didn't know, Richie Castle was the kid in the first movie that gets pushed down and his pumpkin broken, that Michael Myers stops right outside the school, but he lets go. So he has grown up, and ever since that moment, because he heard about the murders afterwards and he saw how evil this guy looked, and so he knew that Michael was responsible for the murders, and so he became so obsessed with it that he ended up losing his family, his job, and so now he's obsessed with taking his revenge. So he goes into the Myers house and he starts throwing around all kinds of gas to light it up, but he's stopped and there's gunshots that go off. So not sure what happens there, but you see he has a couple of cohorts that are supposed to arrive and help him, but they're a little too late on the scene. But what we find out is that it was actually, well, I don't want to show all of that necessarily, but it turns out that it was Sheriff Brackett inside the Myers house. And so that guy caught him off guard and didn't end the best for him. But meanwhile, off in the background, you see Myers just watching with the melted mask. And so, yeah, Brackett ends up what ends up happening is Tommy Doyle shows up at the house as Brackett is removing the body and putting it in his trunk. And Doyle follows him to where he goes to bury the body. And when he does, he confronts him. And basically, Brackett shows him the body and tells him why. And they have a whole conversation without any issues. But the weird thing is, this is where we get a bit of the backstory that we got from the diaries in the first one. So now Brackett tells this whole backstory about the Myers name. It gives a bit more history of that, where it says that the Myers name has been cursed for centuries, and that every so often when a Myers male is born, he's born with what's called the seed of Samhain, which makes them evil. And so that's apparently them trying to give a example of why Michael is evil, and it continues on as they're out there talking. Meanwhile, Myers is back at the house taking care of the two accomplices. So it's kind of a well-paced, divided up issue. But what's weird is this part here. So after he finishes telling the story, suddenly they're all jumped by a bunch of hooded figures, including this older person right here. And I'm a little, since I'm not as steeped in the Michael Myers lore as some people, I wasn't sure if that was someone I was supposed to know or not. It's Blankenship, someone by the name of Blankenship. And it turns out that she and this crew of hooded figures have been assisting Michael behind the scenes for all these years. So I'm not really sure why. We get a little bit more right here when she's talking to someone down here, giving a little bit of why they're doing what they're doing. But yeah, it turns out that Michael tracks down Tommy, and they are being held captive by this group of people. And you know, unfortunately for the group of people, Michael doesn't care who's in his way. He's still trying to get to Sheriff Brackett and Tommy Doyle, and so they have a big throwdown, and it does not end well for Brackett, unfortunately. And then Tommy manages to electrocute Michael and try and escape with Brackett, just as the whole holy house, I think is a church, just as it all blows up. And so that's where it ends up, and he says, you know, that he believes Michael got away. And it says again, to be continued next Halloween. So let me show you a nice close-up of this cover, so you guys can see what this one looks like compared to the other. So I did show you briefly earlier, but there's a better looking one. Pretty cool cover. So that leads us to the third year, which was Halloween 3, The Devil's Eyes. So it was Halloween 2, The Blackest Eyes, and then Halloween 3, The Devil's Eyes. And this is a previews exclusive version right here, apparently. But this is another... It's funny because this series does what Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills is doing, where it brought back Tommy Doyle. Well, yeah, I don't know if... Did they bring back Tommy Doyle in the last one? I can't remember. But they're bringing back another person in this new one, Lindsay, I believe, is the character that was being babysat by Jamie Lee Curtis. In fact, they just released a behind-the-scenes photo of them together. But this starts off with a memory of that night where Laurie is being attacked by Michael and the kids are trying to hide from him. And it turns out that this is a nightmare that Doyle is having. So 2 years have technically passed in the comic continuity since the church blew up. And because there was no Michael Myers body found or anything like that, Doyle got blamed for all of that carnage. So he's been put away in the sanitarium. And right at the beginning, though, he attempts to escape because the warden, or whatever you call it, of the sanitarium, the director, is trying to have him killed. So he manages to escape. And then it cuts to this person right here, who is what I was talking about. It's Lindsay, what do they call her? Lindsay Wallace is her name, right. So this is Lindsay Wallace, grown-up Lindsay Wallace, and she has now returned to Haddonfield because she's a reporter, and she wants to dive deeper into this whole Michael Myers boogeyman thing, and she has all the ties. So she's staying at her house here and learning all about Michael Myers learning about what's been going on in the town since via news stories. So it's a lot of expositional writing. But then all of a sudden, Tommy shows up, all fine and dandy after his escape from the mental hospital, but they have a rough sort of reconnection, but eventually he convinces her to calm down, and so they reconnect. Now at this point, they do actually return to some of the Loomis diaries, and they read into one here where it was from 1970. So what this part reveals, though, is that Michael, there's an interesting thing, and actually it was kind of revealed in the last issue, but this reinforces that Michael, apparently when he was born, they say that he was born on November 1st, but technically he was born at 11:57 on Halloween, but he was stillborn. and then he was declared alive at 12:06 on November 1st. So technically Michael Myers was stillborn, and then a dark soul took the body, and that's when life came at 12:06. So I thought that was an interesting wrinkle for them to throw in, honestly. Whether it's stupid or screws up canon or whatever, I thought it was interesting, at least for the comic book series, to do. So anyway, they are all hanging out, or Tommy and Lindsay are still talking at the house, just, you know, giving each other all this information and going through the diaries, when they hear on the radio that the bodies of Michael Myers' 3 original victims have been exhumed and stolen. That's Annie Brackett, and the 2 other people whose names I don't know. They're here. Sims and what is it? Wanda or something like that? Vada, something like that. Clock is the last name. Anyway, the 3 victims. So they, I don't know why it happens to be this house. Like, there's a little bit of convenience here, but Tommy and Lindsay go upstairs, and in the bedroom they find all 3 of the bodies laying out on the bed with their tombstones, just like in Halloween 1. And even a cool face here, jack-o'-lantern, which, again, a face jack-o'-lantern done way before the movie did it in 2018. It's been done twice now in Halloween comics. But yeah, so Michael tries to chase them down, and he gets a stab in on Tommy while Lindsay escapes. And basically the scene from the first movie kind of replays, where she tries to run across the street for help. No one is at their house or answering. Michael's just walking slowly across, and she can't even get picked up by people driving by, and she basically ends up at the Myers house. So the only thing she can think to do is to try and pull a Friday the 13th and go up to Judith's room, set up the seat, grab the brush, and basically get ready for when Michael shows up. And she tries to stop him by saying, "No, you don't need to do this. You already killed your sisters. It's okay. Don't worry about it." And here's what's weird about this. So what they make sure you know is that the last comic takes place after H2O, when Laurie disappeared, and nobody knows where she went to. The guy that she killed, that was supposedly Michael Myers, because resurrection hadn't happened yet, Laurie disappeared and that guy's head disappeared. So nobody knew what happened, and this picks up on that continuity. So here's the interesting thing: while she's she's getting attacked by Michael, you know, she's trying to fight back, but then Tommy shows up and unmasks Michael. And here's where the big twist was. It turns out that it was actually Laurie under the mask, and she has gone completely nuts after killing Michael at the end of H2O. So she lunges at and stabs Tommy Doyle, and they both go careening out of the window here and dropping down, and Tommy unfortunately does not survive, but she does, and so she's put away, and it's just basically Lindsay that is left to write the story of all of this that's happened, and poor Laurie is just left to rot in the sanitarium there, completely crazy. So that is how this 3-issue Halloween arc ends. It's pretty nuts, honestly, you guys. I was really interested and into it. It wasn't the deepest or necessarily the best executed, but it was ballsy. It was definitely ballsy what they did here. And I think it might have even been one of the pitched ideas for what Halloween Resurrection might have done with Laurie, but obviously that would have been too ballsy for them. So this one is called Halloween One Good Scare. And this one is more directly involved with, as I said, the comics from last year that I was reviewing, written by the same author. So this one was actually pretty cool too. So this takes place about 15 years after the original Halloween, and it's about Loomis's son here, who is trying to be his own man, working at the sanitarium. He works at Smith's Grove, and he just tries to avoid anything that his dad was hung up on, the Michael Myers of it all, everything like that. He tries to just avoid it and be his own man. One day, though, his colleague shows up and tells him that someone's here that he's going to want to talk to. Someone's been admitted. And it turns out that, once again, it is Lindsay Wallace. This is a completely separate continuity than the last one, though. So this is not the same Lindsay Wallace that just went through all of that we just talked about. This is a different Lindsay Wallace that has had her life sort of been screwed up the same way that other character did in the other series that ran into Michael as a little kid. So she has not been the same since she was stalked. You know, they were stalked as a little kid by Michael Myers. So now she's just committed herself because she's sure that Michael is going to be coming to kill her this Halloween. And the reason that she's sure is because she tells them that she saw him. And Michael revealed himself to her the way he revealed himself to Laurie, like outside the window and behind the bushes before he came to kill her. So that's what Michael does, at least in Lindsay's estimation. So this also tells more backstory of Loomis, because it's his father, and once Lindsay is admitted, then he can't help but get drawn into all of his father's research, so he gets sucked into all of Loomis's stuff anyway. So he ends up reading some of Loomis's notes, and one of the stories is this, a time where Loomis just got really fed up with a blank stare Michael, that he literally held the gun to his face, and then actually gave the gun to him, put it in his lap, and said, "Do it, Michael, do it," you know, and then Michael just sat there. And it's just this weird aspect to the Loomis-Michael Myers relationship that we never saw before, that I could totally see Loomis actually doing. So he's, you know, his son is seeing just how twisted Loomis and obsessed he really was with him. But nonetheless, he is basically now, the son is now basically obsessed with Lindsay. And I know I'm saying basically too much. I don't know why, guys. I'm trying to get out of that habit. But nonetheless, it turns out that, yeah, so this is the moment where she saw him, and then he left a pumpkin with a bunch of knives stabbed in the head. So she's sure that Michael is going to be coming after her. And he has no choice but to believe her. So he starts doing a little investigating himself. He goes to the Myers house. He checks it out, but doesn't find anything. And it turns out that when one day, or Halloween comes rather, and they're trying to decide whether or not she's, you know, completely crazy. She's absolutely convinced that Michael's coming for her, so they end up tying her down to her bed, so that way she can't harm herself or harm anyone else. But she actually convinces Loomis Jr. to free her, and meanwhile, it turns out that she's not so wrong, because Myers arrives and starts to kill the doctors around trying to get to her. So yes, she's strapped down, but Loomis Jr. basically frees her, and then she tries to escape anyway, which is what they were worried about. She tries to bash her way through the window down here. Instead, she just escapes into the hallway, and what she sees is Myers with the head of two nurses, these two right here, the young and the old nurse. He's beheaded them both, and he's carrying them. So that's the first thing she sees when she hits the hallway. And she tries to run and escape, and Loomis Jr. comes out and tries to run with her. And this is where it gets really, really dark. So they try and hide in this office, right? They find this office, and they're trying to, well, first they try and escape out the front door, but much like in Halloween 2, they can't get out of Smith's Grove Sanitarium after dark. It needs to be unlocked. Well, actually, that was the hospital, but that's the principle here, is that it's locked after a certain time. So they can't get out, so they go and hide in an office, and the office someone's already been killed in, so she literally slips and hits her head, and Loomis Jr. just decides to hide under the desk, because he's been trying to separate himself from his father, and he is not brave like his father was. So he literally just hides and waits while she reaches out for help, but Michael just comes in and stabs her and takes her away. He doesn't fully kill her, he just incapacitates her and then carries her off, while Loomis Jr. just hides like a little coward. And that's where he goes from there, and he basically says that from here on he's going to have a tortured life, because he knows that he has limited time, since what happened was Michael Myers revealed himself to him just like he did to Lindsay. So now he knows Myers is going to come back and kill him too. And the last page, you get the very disturbing look at what ends up happening to poor Lindsay Wallace, just like her little jack-o'-lantern. So this is really cool, you guys. And just to be clear on the credits for this. The story for this was, again, Stephen Hutchinson, not Joshua like I thought. Stephen Hutchinson, he's the same one that wrote all the comics I did last year. Art by Peter Fielding and lettering by Amanda Hartman. So it was, and it says to be continued summer of 2004, but it never was. But nonetheless, that's this issue. That is Halloween, One Good Scare, and I'm not even sure who it's signed by, but that's almost it. The very last issue that I have to cover that is a Halloween comic, and then I've gotten all of them until they start making more at some point. This is called Halloween Autopsis, and it is a mini comic book. So this is the standard comic size. This is what it actually is sized. This actually came with the Halloween 25 Years of Terror documentary that came out on DVD. So it was a special edition DVD that came with this comic. And just to give proper credit, again, it is written by Stephen Hutchinson, pencils, inks, and assists by Marcus Smith, colors by Nick Dismas, letters by Kelly Brown, and edited by Karen Garcha. So this is about a whole new character that is goes by the name of Carter, and he started off as a movie-loving little kid that had a terrible experience where the movie stopped halfway through and he went up, and his dad, who was the projectionist, had died. And so he just grew up kind of twisted, not many morals, and now he is kind of a sleazy photographer, kind of a nightcrawler situation, and he tries to, make himself happy by taking pictures of the girl that he's with that he knows is way too good for him, but those pictures aren't really doing it for him. And then one day, this guy shows up, and he's an editor of a magazine or an editor of some sort of site that traffics in dark pictures. And so he shows him the picture that he has, and it's this picture of the body of Annie Brackett from, one would guess, the crew that comes in, the forensics team that comes in after a murder. And he's, stating gross, disgusting, and meanwhile in his head he's like, sexy, oh no, he's oddly turned on by this picture, so he becomes obsessed with the Michael Myers of it all. And this actually takes place in the same continuity as the other comics from last year. So this is now Scar-Faced Loomis, as well as Marianne makes an appearance here, and they're both in the comics that I reviewed last time, so it takes place amongst them. But this is just about a guy. This guy becomes obsessed with following around Loomis and taking pictures of him, trying to get access to crime scenes where he can get pictures like Annie's by himself. And now Loomis one day finds him, realizes he's following him and confronts him, but says, just trust me, son, you don't want to be following me. You don't know what I deal with on a regular basis. He can't help it, though. He's still obsessed with it, and he continues to follow him. And there's even throwbacks to some of the other comics that I covered, including the Beauty Queen's beheading, all the victims that he has learned about Michael Myers since becoming obsessed with it. And so he wants more and more carnage like this. And there's this this cool little piece of artwork that shows him, completely dominated by Michael and all of his bodies. It's kind of a cool piece of art. But what ends up happening is he's following Loomis one day when Loomis is confronted by Sheriff Brackett. Brackett still, all these years later, is very, very upset about what happened to Annie, and he still blames Loomis, and he actually blames Loomis because it ended up breaking up his marriage, what happened to his daughter. He dealt with it so poorly. So he blames Loomis for that as well. So he takes it all out on Loomis, and then Loomis has this cool moment where he's like, why are you still following me? He actually says, I know you're still following me. Why are you watching me? What do you want? And then he says, Michael. And the kid's eye goes wide, and he's like, oh, no, he wasn't talking to me. And then it turns out that Michael is actually right behind him, spying on him, and that's lights out for young Carter, and you get to see kind of what happens to him. But it's a really cool little one-off story. It's a good, weird, disturbing, actually way more disturbing. I can't believe that a guy that's obsessed with, he's a bit of a necrophiliac almost. I mean, he doesn't actually do anything, but he's obsessed with pictures of dead people and he's turned on by them. So a very hardcore story to tell in a book that comes in a DVD set. So I did order it separately on eBay, so you don't need to order the DVD. You can get your hands on that book. But that's gonna do it, guys. That is episode 4 of my Halloween comics review series. That is the final episode because that is all of the Halloween comics that are in existence now, having been reviewed. So I hope you appreciate it. If you haven't seen those other episodes, I'm going to link to the first one at the end of this episode so you can go back and watch them if you haven't and you don't know what those comics are about. It's pretty crazy. These are all what I like to call, what DC calls Elseworlds. I just refer to them as horror Elseworlds, or Fuego would say another turn of the wheel in Stephen King parlance. So these are just different stories that aren't told in the movies, different sequels, if you will. So that's why I enjoy doing them, but they're hard to get your hands on, or pricey at least. So I go ahead and go through them with you guys so you don't have to do it. You can make your decision if you want to add them to your collection or not. But thank you very much for watching. If you guys didn't know, right now we launched a crowdfunding campaign for a Nightmare fan film, actually. It is a fan film sequel to Wes Craven's New Nightmare called Dylan's New Nightmare, and it is going to be starring Nico Hughes himself returning to reprise the role of Dylan Porter. So we're really excited about it. We're trying to raise funds. There's about 2 weeks left as this goes up, so we could really use all the help we can get. Even if you can't contribute monetarily, please share it out, because the more shares, the more people know, and the better chances we have to bring you guys a really cool Freddy movie. The link to that is the top link in the description box. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, click the like button and subscribe, so that way you don't miss more. We have been doing reviews of all the Nightmare comics, so if you're interested in any of those have been going recently. I'll probably link to one of those in the post in the in the end screen there, so you can check that out too. But thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I've been Cecil Laird, and remember, stay scared.